boxers and other athletes that you work with, who would you say is your favourite type of person to be working with?
I work with any athlete across any sport, any human across any walk of life, as long as they have a desire to get better. So boxers are high octane. I love it. Like 2 camps here with Conor Benn this year, or last year now as we shoot this. And me and Conor are so aligned because he knows I lead from the front, my standards are incredibly high, and we have a huge value alignment because we just push every single day. So me and Conor get on very, very well. But fundamentally, I started in this industry to help people because I've done this for, 20 years actually in Feb. And we've got to look at identifying your arena and bringing your best self in that moment. So our 4 pillars are training, nutrition, recovery, and mindset. Let's not overcomplicate it. We'll talk ice baths, we'll talk saunas, but they are the cherry on top of the cake. You got to have the foundation in place first. And that's where those 4 pillars, you can't really go wrong. I think we know that anyone listening now knows that if someone turns up in the boardroom, you're trying to close a whatever figure deal. If you've had 4 hours sleep, if you've got high levels of allostatic load and chronic stress, if you're not hydrated, a 2% drop in dehydration can massively impact cognitive function, mental clarity and performance, then I think we know that that person is not going to be at their peak, at their optimum to get to the outcome that they're looking to achieve, closing a deal or whatever that looks like.
Right, welcome back to the podcast, the Stephen Sully Study. I'm here at my second home, Woodbury House here in Mayfair, which is my business. And I've got a wicked guest in front of me, Mr. Daniel Lawrence. Welcome to the podcast and welcome to Woodbury House in Mayfair. Before I start, I know we're here to talk about high performance. We're here to talk about longevity. We're here to talk about positivity, setting goals, etc. Putting that to one side just for a moment, stepping inside Woodbury House for the first time, what's your thoughts and feelings towards it?
Honestly, it's got the wow factor. I came in and I thought it's going to be a cool pod. One, it's going to be a great conversation. I know we've had some comms offline, but I thought, look, it's going to be cool. We're in an art gallery. Let's see what it's all about. But yeah, massively exceeded expectation. Well done. You've got a great setup here.
Thanks, mate. So I'm going to start with this first question. High performance, that word, that title, you do see it get battered around a little bit on social media. As we spoke off camera, and we're going to talk further on here, both got backgrounds in boxing, and the word warrior reminds me of fighters and boxers, and that word has been slightly diluted over time because people just chuck it around. What is really your interpretation of a high performer?
For me, high performance is contextual to the individual. So we've spoken about George Groves, Conor Benn, all of these high octane athletes that are very much in the public eye. Of course, they're high performance, and that's what, generally speaking, people will anchor and associate towards the words high performance. But also people like us sitting here now, we need to be cognitively sharp. We need to have slept well, eaten well to bring our best self to a conversation. So irrespective of where you're at on a journey, whether you're a high performing athlete crossing the white line at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, a Premier League footballer, or George Groves, Conor Benn at 10 o'clock in front of however many thousand at Wembley or however many thousand at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, most recently with Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank. That's high performance as well. So identifying where your feet are and trying to get better each and every day, for me, that's what high performance means.
There's a quote I heard on a few podcasts and a few interviews you've done, Dan, and I think it's something along the lines of start where your feet are, or something along those lines. And I really, really did resonate with that, because I do think, if someone is going on to this fitness, health, positivity journey for the first time, and that hasn't been part of their makeup or hasn't been part of their, let's say, environment previously, but they want to change that now, they could feel a little bit intimidated with that phrase, that word of high performer or high performance, and they feel that they need to be a Conor Benn or George Groves, a Premiership footballer, a rugby player, whoever. What does that mean? If you can give me your take on that saying and maybe tweak it if I said it wrong.
For me, comparison is the thief of joy. And we can absolutely be inspired by other people, take motivation from them, whether that's on social media or in your environment, whatever you're exposed to, whether that's elite level athletes or other. But if you start trying to compare to those people and you're starting your journey, it's a complete night and day shift. It's so far away, so it's unattainable. So then you said intimidated, it's intimidating, it's overwhelming, and fundamentally you're setting yourself up for failure. So start where you stand is identifying where your feet are now and then going on a journey from your current position. So not trying to think I'm Conor Benn or other, not thinking, oh, actually 4 years ago, I was dominating in the gym. I was going to the gym 4 or 5 days a week. I was eating well. I was sleeping well. I had everything sorted. But now I've had 2 kids. I'm still thinking I'm that same person. So that's where start where your feet are or start where you stand are. Identify where you're at now, get clear with your goals, and then start from that position, not anyone else's position.
Yeah, I love that. Part of this business is sales. We like to say that we don't sell art, we place artwork with collectors. That's our spin on it. And it's true, whether it's people are looking to collect because of the historical importance, whether they're looking to collect as a wealth preservation exercise or to build long-term wealth and gains. But the facts are, things like this don't sell themselves. You need a really good team to educate people, inspire people, and expand their collection or start a new one. And I always say to salespeople, you need to be congruent. And what that means is you need to be well educated, you need to look the part, you need to feel the part. And whilst they're not looking to get into the ring with someone like a Conor Benn and go 12 rounds or be on a football pitch and score goals, you have to be almost like an athlete within the world of sales and the world of business, a business athlete basically. So if you're doing all the right things in here, but you're doing all the right things outside, it's incongruent. And eventually that will show up at the end of the month where you're not hitting targets and stuff. How much you support being congruent in the life that you live, Dan?
Completely aligned. If you're looking to bring your best self in whatever your arena is, so this is the key part, identify your arena. Is it the squared circle of a boxing ring? Is it a football pitch? Is it in the boardroom? Whatever that works for you specifically. Again, start where you stand. And then how do I bring my best self to that moment? We have 4 pillars in my business, Perform 365. The health, performance, longevity space, whatever we like to call it, is often overcomplicated. In 2023, the World Health Organization's valuation was $6.3 trillion. So we know that a lot of people are jumping on this health bandwagon to make money, and I can't begrudge them for that. But fundamentally, I started in this industry to help people because I've done this for, 20 years actually in Feb, as I don't know when this is coming out, so 20 years. And we've got to look at identifying your arena and bringing your best self in that moment. So our 4 pillars are training, nutrition, recovery, and mindset. Let's not overcomplicate it. We'll talk ice baths, we'll talk saunas, but they are the cherry on top of the cake. You got to have the foundation in place first. And that's where those 4 pillars, you can't really go wrong. We'll, of course, I'm sure today elaborate on what that actually looks like, how it's specific to the individual. But I think we know that anyone listening now knows that if someone turns up in the boardroom, you're trying to close a whatever figure deal. If you've had 4 hours sleep, if you've got high levels of allostatic load and chronic stress, if you've had 5 Guys or Burger King the evening prior and not had anything for breakfast, if you're not hydrated, a 2% drop in dehydration can massively impact cognitive function, mental clarity and performance, then I think we know that that person is not going to be at their peak, at their optimum to get to the outcome that they're looking to achieve, closing a deal or whatever that looks like.
There's another thing that I feel like has slightly been diluted over time, but I do believe the real version of it is a real thing in my opinion. And you hear a lot of high performers or a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of positive people talk about it, which is the law of attraction and attracting things into your space. And I feel that the law of attraction, the way it does work, when you're thinking about something so much and you're writing it down as a goal and you've got this vision or vision boards and stuff like that, I think part of the puzzle with it or the formula for it is if you're eating right, you're sleeping right, recovery, you're training right, and you're around the right people, that kind of engages the law of attraction. To some people listening to this, and my dad was listening to this conversation, even though he's done pretty well financially, he's from the old school. He'll still say, what are you smoking? It's a load of, I don't even think he would be that disrespectful, but it'll be like, come on, it's a bit nonsense type thing. But for people that are on the fence with the thing of like law of attraction, 1, do you believe in it? And do you believe in the law of attraction? And 2, what's your interpretation of how it works?
I like the law of attraction. I prefer to call it law of action. So we can manifest, we can have these lofty goals, we can write them down, we can do our visualization, we can try and speak it into existence. But fundamentally, it comes with how you show up each and every day. So going back to your previous point of training, nutrition, recovery, mindset, being cognitively sharp and showing up with high energy each and every day, that's how you take action. So yes, you've got to know where you're going, One of my favorite quotes, sorry to sound philosophical, is if one doesn't know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. We're quite literally treading water. We're going around in circles. So that's the outcome. So that could be the law of attraction. That could be, okay, I'm going to manifest these goals. I'm going to write them down. I'm going to put them on my vision board, put them on my phone. I'm going to bring them to closer to me. So I'm always getting reminded about this. But something we say, Stephen, you'll relate to this from boxing, is winners and losers have the same goal. The goal is to win, right? But does that bring you any closer to the goal? It's a signal of intent, but the answer is no. What we then do is reverse engineer and put the steps in place to reach that goal. We break that down into the process. What does the daily action look like to get you close to that goal? Think of it like building a wall. The goal is to build the wall. That's the outcome. That doesn't help you build the wall. You lay brick by brick by brick, and before you know it, you have a wall. So for me, back to your question of law of attraction, I do believe in it. I think knowing where you're going is vitally important. That's the outcome. Otherwise, how do you set daily action and process orientated goals if you don't know where you're going? The outcome shapes the process, but the process drives the outcome.
I'll show you afterwards, so you know I'm not giving you a load of BS. So in my phone, I've got notes, and in my notes I've got different things for like different type of reasons. And when I've either got friends, people close to me, or even, let's say, new staff members, specifically in the role of an art dealer, sales, etc., I get them to look at product knowledge and all that kind of stuff, but then I will give them more broader, successful podcasts to listen to. I've got Barry Hearn in there from the High Performance podcast, really, really good. I listen to that myself, every so often. I have Gary Brecker one, etc. And there's one, you're on one. You're part of my
How have I made that line up?
You're on there. And I tell you what, the podcast that I listen to with you, and what really resonated with me, which actually I knew it, but I kind of forgot about it, and it sort of kind of hit me in the face metaphorically and said, you need to get back on that way of thinking, Steve. Self-worth. You were talking about self-worth, and I don't know why, because I've heard self-worth, read about self-worth so many times, but it was when you were talking about on this particular podcast, I thought, he's so fucking right. It just makes a lot of sense. And I think you become a lot more successful, and you kind of become lucky, inverted commas, when your self-worth goes through the roof. So learn a new language, doing the ice baths, doing the saunas, training in the morning, being around people, listening to a podcast, listening to an audio book, reading a book, all these kind of things increase your self-worth. So my question to you is, how does somebody build their self-worth? Now, I've just listed some of the obvious, but to a certain individual who's looking to become a lot more confident and they want to take the first few steps building their own internal self-worth, how do they go about doing that?
The word that screams out is identity. For me, identity shapes everything. Leaning into the person that you wish to become before you are that person. So a story, someone on our executive coaching program, you won't mind me saying his name, Nathan, very close, been with me for 2 years now. He's, or was, a CEO of a nationwide company, successful nationwide company in the UK. But he had lofty goals to be an international global CEO. So we started to identify, what does a global CEO do? How do they articulate? What do they wear? How do they posture? Where do they stay? So he lives up north. When he came down to London, he stayed at a hotel in Kensington that he said was probably a little bit punchy for him financially at the time, but that's what an international CEO does. He wears fitted suits now. He's lost a lot of body fat, a lot of weight. He's put on a bit of muscle, and now, lo and behold, he's an international CEO. So he'd listen to all the podcasts, all the audio books. He'd do a lot of deep work around strategy and showing up each and every day. Had a lovely moment with him. I live in Dubai now, Stephen, and he came over to Dubai. Reason being, he was closing deals in the GCC, big deals. So he is now a global international CEO. So to your question, for me, it all comes back to identity. How do you value yourself, and how do you see yourself before others can see you? You know, looking at intrinsic versus extrinsic. If you don't believe in yourself and you're moving from a place of scarcity, that's problematic. We've got to be looking at things from an abundance viewpoint. So it's not coming from a place of need, it's coming from a place of want. You know, I want to perform well on this podcast. I don't need to perform. I'm not, I want to. And I'm okay with that. If I don't, I don't. If I do, I do. So I think it's how you view yourself, it's your identity, and it really comes back to believing in yourself. So to your point, how do you do that? Set small goals, achieve those goals, and then set another one, and then achieve another one. We're told to set lofty goals. And, I've read 10x is better than 2x. I've read all the scaling books, set these huge, huge goals. I understand the premise of it, because the saying is what got you to X level won't get you to the next level. If financially your business has done 5 million revenue one year, now the next year you want to do 15 million. Well, that's 3x. That's punchy. The reason they say that is because what got you to 5 million won't get you to 15 million. So you're going to have to modify. You're going to probably have to bring integrations, AI. You're probably going to have to change your team, your leadership models, your operations to then get you to that other goal. So I understand all of that. But yeah, going back to self-worth, set small goals and achieve the goals, because this is going back to identity. If you set such a lofty goal, let's say it's someone earlier on in their health and performance journey, and we're like, right, we want to do this in 12 weeks time, or we want to do this in a year's time. It's so far away from where they're at now, where their feet are now, it's unattainable. So we've got to focus on small daily actions. Yes, longer term goals in place, but let's set a very small goal. Let's say non-negotiables. Let's try and do these 5 things every single day for the next 30 days. If you achieve that, tick that off, what does that then do? You start believing in yourself. You believe that you are now identifying as someone who can set a goal, put the steps in place and achieve a goal. Okay, now I'm going to set another 1 or 2 goals. I'm going to do the same. Rinse, repeat, achieve, tick off, go again. So to your point of self-worth, identity, for me, interchangeable words, that's how you do it. Is start small, know where you're going longer term, absolutely, but then start setting goals and ticking those goals off. And I'm sure today we'll talk about environment and what that will do for those goals as well.
I part of that the notes I've got on my phone, there's another podcast, and it was with John Legend, and I didn't realize that's not his actual real name. And there was a manager or some sort of agent who identified him as a talent and said, like, you're like a legend, and it kept on saying it to him, and he adopted this persona of John Legend. And when the interview, they were picking it kind of apart and sort of analysing him as this, celebrity, successful singer. They put it down to something called like the Batman effect. There was a test done with like 3 sets of kids, and they had to work out this puzzle. And anyway, ultimately, there was the third group. They were dressed up in Superman, Batman, all of these characters, and they said, "You are Batman. You're in the Batman costume. You are Batman. Go and sort out this puzzle." And they were more committed to sorting out the puzzle because they saw themselves as Batman and they dressed it like it. So they said adults still subconsciously perform like that. So if I turned up today in, I don't know, maybe my gym gear or, I don't know, like a dressing gown, I probably wouldn't actually...
Batman outfit.
I probably wouldn't actually maybe articulate the conversation as well. But where I feel, I don't know, I feel like, put on a nice pair of trainers, put on a nice watch. I was going to talk to you about actually, your good self, like stuff that you've bought, like the Porsche and obviously watches and stuff. In a roundabout way, that is kind of like the Batman effect, because it's a reminder that you are successful. It's another reminder of a medal that you've won. And it's almost like that gratitude thing. When things are tough, because everyone goes through tough moments mentally and physically, you can look down at your wrist or your clothes that you're wearing or the home that you live in or living in Dubai and think, you know what? Things aren't actually that bad and I am a success, so let's push on forward. So I know I've gone on a bit of rant there, but that Batman effect of leaning into the character you want to be, is that something you teach your clients?
Absolutely. I love it. I hadn't actually heard of the Batman effect, but yeah, the premise is you look at Kobe Bryant, Mamba mentality. Kobe Bryant off the court was an individual. Kobe Bryant on the court was the Black Mamba. He changed and shifted into who he needed to be a winner. We have that with my boxers. We've got to, they can be the nicest people, as you know, better than anyone. Boxers are the nicest people outside the ring. Though in the ring, they're warriors. And they need to have the ability to shift. And for people like us, the everyday athlete, so to speak, we do need to have those reminders for sure. You've got a lovely watch there as well. We don't do that for extrinsic validation. For me, it's a reward mechanism from years of relentless hard work and showing up. And I think that's fundamentally important in the goal setting process is if you don't have a reward mechanism, you don't get that dopamine hit for however long it lasts, then that's a problem, because you will likely fall off track. So I think having constant reminders of however you want it to be, whatever the reward looks like for you. It could be a lovely piece of art, it could be a nice car, a nice watch, whatever that looks like for you specifically. I think it's important to reward hard work and discipline over an extended period of time.
So I was going to ask you, Dan, if you're okay with talking about it. So like, you know, the type of rewards that sort of materialistic goals, what type of things like get you firing and get you excited?
It's individual dependent. I'll go general and then I'll go to myself specifically, if that's okay. So we look at extrinsic versus intrinsic. Extrinsic is, am I doing it for others' validation? Which, you know, it's fine if that's what you want. I personally don't do it for that, but I will come back to that shortly. Intrinsic is, why am I doing this, and does it have a deeper meaning? Does it make me feel fulfilled? In what I do in the health and performance space of 20 years now, I could have got into different industries if my sole goal was to make money, right? It's not how it was now. 20 years ago, it wasn't a profitable industry. Thankfully now there's been a shift. People are now completely going full circle on their health. 5 years ago, it was deemed cool to have a bottle of Diet Coke and a takeaway watching X Factor on a Saturday evening, maybe with a couple of pints. Now that's very much frowned upon because people are really looking at their health. You mentioned your father earlier and frowning upon what you were saying around the manifestation. And I understand that because that's a generational shift. But there's also now lots of research these days to showcase the way we live our lives is certainly the way people should, if they do want to be around for a long period of time. Longevity is a word that's thrown around, and something we say is we want to add years to your life, but we also want to add life to your years. We want to be able to enjoy those, be energized, not have injury, bring your best self to every meeting, moment, time with your family. So I haven't completely swerved your question, I promise. So what gets me going? Yeah, like, do you know what? My younger self, I would have bought the first Rolex for me a little bit, but more so for others to say, oh, look, he's doing well. Completely, like I'll own that and be very honest with that. I remember I went to Hatton Gardens and bought my first Rolex. I don't know how old I was, 23, 24 years old. And it was the best feeling ever. Pasha Jewelers it was at the time. I'll never forget it. Incredible. It was the one that I wanted. And I bought this one a few years ago and I said offline, I didn't feel like I deserved it, but I'd worked hard. But then there was a strategy behind it. And many listening, hopefully they will understand this. With the business, I think, look, perception is reality. So now I'm being honest with the external. I said, I don't do this for extrinsic validation. And I don't do it for someone to say, oh yeah, great, you know, you've got a nice watch, you know, whatever. But we've had that in business where, again, if you present yourself the right way, you look the part, you train well, you sleep well, you eat well, aesthetically you look good, you wear nice clothes, doesn't have to be flash designer, nice clothes, you know, you're respectful, you can communicate, you have great values, and then you're wearing a nice watch. It's the full package for someone to say, actually, this guy, I like him, he talks well, we've got a value alignment, and evidently he's doing pretty well. So there is a strategy behind that as well. So I don't know whether that fully answers your question. I like nice things. I live in Dubai now, got a few properties. I do like a nice watch. I've just bought a nice car. But for those things, I do that for myself. I do that to allow me to live the life I want to live. I'm in Dubai and I was getting taxis everywhere. So I've been in Dubai nearly 2 years now. As you know, it's such a transient place. I've done 3 training camps in that time where I work Premier League footballers in Quinta do Labo in Portugal every summer. I've done a couple of training camps with Conor Benn. So I felt like I didn't need a car, but I also felt quite shackled because Ubers are very easy to get, but you can only really stay in the central part of Dubai. Myself and my girlfriend like going for hikes. We like going to the desert. We like decompartmentalizing and moving ourselves from the hustle and bustle and fast pace of Dubai, which I absolutely love. You know, it's very high octane, which is how I operate. Every now and again, it's good to get away. So we go to Oman or we go to the desert for a couple of days, and having a car will allow me to do that. So again, I haven't done that for someone else. I've done that to allow me to live the life that I want to live.
I do think, especially a watch and also like the clothes that people wear, and how you hold yourself and how you speak and how you sound and everything else. I do think it's a conversation starter, and I do believe in the more conversations you have with the right people, the more opportunity you get.
I agree.
And I think, you know, when you were talking, it reminded me a little bit of this journey with Woodbury House. We were in Soho for a number of years in a private art studio, so not a white wall gallery. It was very much like a private art studio stroke office type thing. Very cool, you know, bare brick sort of looking place, like a Soho House type vibe. But it was Soho and it's a cool area. And when we decided to make the leap of faith over here to Mayfair, we said to ourselves, it is the perception play as well. You know, if you're in a 3,500 square foot venue, which effectively used to be Banks's type former gallery and stuff, and the high profile people that, you know, from people like yourself or athletes or business people or art investors, collectors or hedge fund managers, there's been so many people walk through the door because it is in Mayfair. So it's the perception play. But I also believe in build yourself a target rich environment. If you're in the environment of where the big players are, big shit will happen if you really want it enough. And so I've gone off on a tangent slightly. So I'm going to circle the conversation back to yourself, Dan. Target rich environment, was that part of the reason why you moved to somewhere like Dubai?
Absolutely. For me, environment dictates outcomes. 4 of your mates are going to the pub, you're going to be the 5th mate. 4 of your friends are having powerful conversations and are growth-minded like us, and they want to progress and grow, you'll be the 5th friend. Choose your environment wisely, because that will shape your future. Dubai, yes, which I'll come to, but I've even been more tactile much earlier on in my journey. I was a very successful coach back in the day, won multiple awards at like a Virgin Active in front of, about probably 5,000 coaches nationwide when they were, I suppose, at the top of their game. But I knew my environment wasn't right for me. I'd hit the summit of that mountain, so to speak, at that time. And I'd always seen more. I'd always seen my journey was bigger than that. So I got approached by BXR in, I don't know what year it was, many moons ago now, which was a cool gym and still is a cool gym in Marylebone. They wanted to have the best practitioners in the UK working there. My friend Doug Tannehill, an osteopath, reached out. I said, look, I can only really commit to 2.5 days there, because I was taking a bit of a pay cut at the time, but I was being a macro level thinker. I was thinking about the bigger picture, not a micro level thinker with my head down. And I thought, okay, if I expose myself to a slightly different type of clientele in the heart of Marylebone, then the likelihood is I'm going to open a lot more doors, to your point. I back myself, I believe in myself, I've done all my studies, I've had, at that point, I think a decade of real hard work. I'd worked with George Groves, I had exposure to some Premier League footballers, I'd done pretty well. But I knew to unlock that next level, something needed to change. So I put myself in that environment. Within 6 months, I'm working with, I'm not going to state who for confidentiality reasons, but 2 Middle Eastern royal families from different places. So 6 months, and then 9 months I was with the second one, traveling the world with them. So I truly believe environment dictates outcomes. You've got to put yourself in that environment, but don't just put yourself there. You've got to do the work in advance. You've got to bring your best self, do the deep work on yourself. And fundamentally, now this is the key, you've got to add value to one's life. Don't just try and give first, and then like a boomerang, it will come back round. That's always how I've lived my life. We've never just chased money. And for many listening, they might not believe that. We've never chased money. We've always gone value above money, and then the money's just come back round. So for me, what I do is about changing people's lives. But I truly believe to do that, you need to set your environment up for success.
Yeah. You've almost kind of described that opportunity meeting preparation kind of saying, which is like the definition of luck, what some people define as luck. You can be in the right, environment, but if you haven't prepared for that environment, you either will see the opportunity and you won't be able to do anything about it, or you won't notice the opportunity. And that's the scary thing sometimes. It's about seeing the opportunity and taking the opportunity by the scruff of its neck. And that can only happen if you've prepared yourself mentally and physically for it. And I certainly support that. So let's talk about some of the high profile people that you work with, Dan, because as I said when we were speaking over WhatsApp, over the phone, and also just before this podcast, I have an alliance with sports people, but I would say fighters, boxers. 16 fights myself, not as a pro, but done okay with that. Still doing a bit still now, just a little bit, once a week. And what I love about fighters is that mentality. If you don't put the hard work in, you'll be found out in the ring. And it's kind of a metaphor for life, right? It's also, I think business is a bit like a 12-round boxing fight. The first couple of rounds, you could be right on the front foot and it could appear to be easy. And that was the example I'm going to give is a bit like the watch dealers in COVID, where everything went through the roof. And I could have set up a watch company or brand within that time period, and I could be buying and selling watches. It was really, really easy. But when the economy turns on you, you go into recessions, depressions, all these kind of things. That's when the boxer is on their back foot, and they're kind of, they're making little adjustments and just trying to see out that round in order to reset and go again. So, boxers and other athletes that you work with, who would you say is your favourite type of person to be working with?
I'll touch on that in a second, but first part of what you said there is life is not a linear path. If it was, it would be very easy, right? You're going to get knocked down. You're going to come back. You're going to be on the front foot at times. Then you're going to be on the back foot. Then you're going to think, have I got anything left? We're going to hit so many humps in the road on this journey. But fundamentally, champions and winners are the ones that know how to overcome those humps and get their head down and get on with it. So yeah, completely aligned with that. I love the metaphor of the boxing side of things. I hadn't thought of it that way. So who is the best, or who are the type of character traits?
Yeah, we'll go for both of those. So, let's just say a boxer, fighter versus someone like a footballer.
Yeah,
both winners. Both superstars. What type of athlete out of those two do you prefer working with?
The athlete who I have value alignment with. So the athlete who I like as a person who wants to improve. I'll work with any athlete across any sport, any human across any walk of life, as long as they have a desire to get better. So that said, I'll give you a bit more, Stephen, don't worry. Boxers are high octane. I love it. Like 2 camps here with Conor Benn this year, or last year now as we shoot this. And me and Conor are so aligned because he knows I lead from the front. My standards are incredibly high, and he values that. And we have a huge value alignment because we just push every single day. So me and Conor get on very, very well. I like working with, Conor and boxers. Boxers probably a little bit ahead. Look, they're both lovely people, footballers and boxers. All the athletes I've worked with are great people, because it goes back to who are you as a human first? What are your values? But for me, boxers as well, because with footballers, I work with many Premier League footballers over the years, international footballers, but I work with them primarily in the off season, some of which in season from a performance consultancy point of view. But it's challenging because there's other influences there, i.e. they're contractually obligated to a club. So, do you get full ownership of that? And the answer is no. Whereas if I'm head of performance at Matchroom, as I've been for 7.5 years, and working most recently with Conor Benn against Chris Eubank, I have complete ownership and control. I will steer the ship, of course, working closely with Tony Sims, the head boxing coach, but me and Tony have such synergy and alignment with the overall relationship, as does every member of the team, with one sole goal, and that's Conor Benn to get his arm raised on fight night. So a long-winded answer, boxers are a little bit ahead of the footballers for sure.
I'm a big boxing fan, obviously done a bit of boxing, but I'm a huge boxing fan. Most of the podcast guests I've had on are boxers, and I just love talking to them because I just love that fighter mentality, the discipline, and I just think that you can transfer that over into loads of different parts of your life. And I will say I got into business because I started doing boxing. I honestly do believe that it gave me that self-worth of let's go out there and do it.
Yeah.
So the first Conor Benn fight with Chris Eubank Jr., and then the second one, you were obviously living and breathing both of those camps, and you were there. I look at that first fight, and it was a really, really good fight, very entertaining fight, and it was a proper battle. And when Conor did lose, he got his first loss, there's a shot where I think he's leaning over the ropes and his dad's in the background and he's looking out into the abyss, into the crowd. And you could really see he was mentally really upset. Not because he didn't give it his all, he gave 100%, but winning meant everything to him. And I think for some of these backseat drivers or people commenting on social media going, oh, he's made 10 million or X, Y, Z, it shows in that moment when he had a bit of a tear coming down his face and he was distraught that he lost. Money is great, and obviously enjoying the nice stuff that money can give you is fantastic, but you could really see in his heart, whether he earned 10 million, 100 million, winning was everything to him. So my question to you is, Conor Benn as a person and also as a fighter, how badly does he want to win?
Win is everything. Conor gave everything in that first fight. We obviously adapted, and I'm happy to talk about the changes that were made into the second one, but he was carrying a lot of weight on his shoulders. I think in hindsight, we did everything we could to prepare well. We had a great training camp, zero excuses first time round. But, the turbulent time and what he'd been through, and there was lots of unknowns in that first fight, you know, going out in front of 62,000 people at Tottenham, first fight in the UK for a couple of years, never boxed at 160 pounds, a natural 147 pound fighter, never boxed anyone near the caliber of Chris Eubank Jr. and who Chris had been in the ring with. So there were lots of unknowns, never did a ring walk like that. And he performed very, very well. In fact, the overriding emotion and feeling was pride. But you can only be proud once. We couldn't take that into the second fight. The second fight we had to win. We wanted to win the first one. We did everything we could to win the first one. Conor came away with his head held high, and we then put the steps in place to win the second one. To your question, Conor gives everything to win. Everything. Everything is set up. He invests heavily in his training camp, in his team. He has the best people around him. He doesn't take it for granted. He is an incredibly disciplined, hard worker, and he'll just work so hard every day to ensure that he gets his arm raised. Sometimes that may not happen, but you better believe he's done everything he can to ensure that it does.
I've said this sort of analogy a couple of times, and I use this analogy quite a lot because when I'm speaking to salespeople, you like, let's say outsiders sometimes, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but I might have a conversation with them about, you know, salespeople and etc. And they go, oh, yeah, he's got the gift of the gab. I hear that a lot. Gift of the gab, gift of the gab. And there's a little bit of truth in that. Some people have a bit of charisma. Some people have that gift of the gab. You know, they're really good at talking to the females, the birds in bars and stuff. And they've got this kind of aura about them. But I have hired them type of people, and they flop within a target setting environment, and they can't articulate things in a certain way. And here's the thing I was going to say is, people, whether that is sales, athletes, etc., I see it as two kind of worlds. You're either made in heaven, so you have a bit of a natural ability of doing something, and you just home in on that and enhance it, or you're manufactured on earth. And a good example of that is almost like a Ronaldo and a Messi. For me, Messi is made in heaven. God touched him, or whoever it is up there touched him and made him float, and just this very, very amazing footballer. Ronaldo is a machine. He is literally the Terminator. You know, you don't want to mess with this guy because he is 100% a machine. You know, he can run through walls. So someone like Conor Benn, would you say he's made in heaven or he is a manufactured on earth?
Oh, I'm sitting on the fence. He's somewhere in between. Like you could say with the living legend, two-time world champion Nigel Benn being his father, that he was made in heaven, to your point. He definitely had the physical qualities. You know, he's a high octane, fast twitch athlete for sure. But Conor's success and growth has come from discipline and hard work. Fundamentally, he might have had those traits, but you've actually got to do the work to ensure that those traits are brought to the forefront at the highest level of pro sport. This is not Sunday League football where anyone can do it. You can just rock up, do the WKD warm-up where your hands are on the heater or whatever it was back in the day. This is every detail matters. Margins matter. Every percentage matters. So for me, yeah, look, he might have been born with some of the physical components and been exposed to an environment with his father, which was discipline, hard work. He'd seen with hard work what that can potentially get someone, i.e. Nigel. But then he's got to show up and do the work. In fact, for me, someone like Conor is even more impressive than, you know, someone who is just driven by humble beginnings and, you know, they've got to do the work to get out of their current situation, which I wholeheartedly respect, just to be very clear. But then you look at people like Conor, Eddie Hearn's another one. You mentioned Barry earlier. I actually massively respect those people because they could have had it easy. But they've taken what they've had, which was success, wealth, growth, and they've taken it to a completely different stratosphere. So for me, those people are equally as impressive. Somewhere in between is the answer, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's a good answer. I really enjoy him, watching him fight. He is literally someone that gives. I've got my two favourite fighters, which are polar opposites, but I admire everything they do and have done in their career, is George Groves. I love that. I've actually been present watching him sparring at the Haymaker, and it was just, I was in awe of him. I mean, just in awe. To see someone fight on TV is one thing, but to see it there's something about sparring that you don't actually see in real fights as well, which it's poetic. It's beautiful to watch. There's little nuances and things. It's just great. And then the other person is Mayweather, and most people criticise me saying that because they say he's boring, but that defensive technique is just so hard to mimic. But the argument is it's not really that entertaining for some people. And with someone like Conor, going back to my point, he's super entertaining. He could be fighting a journeyman or Chris Eubank Jr. or whoever, hopefully Ryan Garcia may be in the pipeline, and you're going to get value for money. And I think that's why a lot of people respect him.
And also, it's not just the fight. It's what comes around the fight as well. Conor gets it. You got to be more than just a boxer, more than just an athlete. You got to be able to sell. You got to market well. Again, it's like your own business. It's your own vehicle. How do you make that vehicle move faster? So he understands. Conor's an incredibly smart young man, and he gets it. He gets the game. So you see some fighters, I won't say who, but someone put it up on socials the other day, so it's front and center in my mind. He's a world champion, and he was doing a post himself about looking for sponsorship. This is a legitimate world champion in a good weight class, not one of the very small weight classes. And it was a bogus email address as well. It was like, his best friend's email or something. And I'm just like, that's where you've got to really understand the game. I get it. Listen, I'm a boxing purist. I've been in boxing the other side of the ropes for a long period of time at the highest level. I understand the game. It's hard work. It's discipline. You've also got to understand the bigger picture. Fundamentally, it's a tough sport. There's no tougher sport. You've got to get paid the most money possible and keep your faculties and get out.
Yeah, agreed. When I've watched on social media and listened to interviews from you and also from Conor and the whole entire camp, Tony Sims, etc., I know, again, people say these words and these phrases all the time, but it does feel like that camp is a family unit. And what I respect from seeing what you do as well, Dan, is you are literally competing with Conor, not from the boxing side, but the sport, running, the endurance stuff. You're doing it with him, and he's almost like a brother to you in that moment in time, or probably still is now. So I'm going to ask you a couple of things on that. When the loss happened, how did it affect you emotionally as effectively a good friend to him, but also his professional trainer?
The underlying emotion for me was pride. Seriously, I was proud of Conor, and it's weird. I've had defeats at the highest level of boxing. You mentioned George Groves earlier. I work with George. George is a close friend of mine now, and always will be. I was part of George's camp for the first Froch fight, which it was an absolute masterclass from George. Howard Foster, still I'll say it, stepped in too early, but that then made the second fight what it was, 80,000 at Wembley, which we know what happened there. Kudos to Carl Froch with that stoppage. It's great to see George and Carl's relationship now really flourishing. So I've had some defeats at the highest level. George again in Las Vegas. Mayweather Berto, another name you mentioned. I was ringside for that. George was on the undercard against a incredibly unknown Badu Jack at the time, who we now obviously know he was, and is, I think, still cruiserweight world champion, WBC. Incredible career. But at the time, he was an unknown entity, and George lost that one on a split decision. So,
and I personally thought he won that.
Yeah.
And he got off the canvas off the first round.
Yeah, he got clipped in the back. It's really interesting because that fight, and George absolutely won't mind me saying this now, our training camp was way too long. We're in Big Bear in the San Bernardino Mountains, 6,500 feet above sea level. So we went up there for altitude. These days we just get a hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber and mimic that, but do it in the UK. That's what we introduced, or what I introduced with Conor this camp to really aid his recovery. Back in the day in 2012, 2013, we had to go up to the mountain just outside LA. We're up there for too long. And, he got a cuffing shot, wasn't anything, just to the back of the ear, and he went down. Not heavy, but went down. And that probably lost him the fight in hindsight. So, you said something there of competing with Conor. I think I'm partaking with Conor, but I appreciate the words. Look, I'm 37, soon to be 38, probably 38 when this comes out. I lead from the front. That's why Conor respects me. There's no BS with me. This is how I live my life every single day. The Japanese philosophical word Kaizen springs to mind. Continuous improvement. That's how I want to live. My biggest fear, Stephen, is staying the same. That really fucking scares me, man. I want to grow. I'm learning today. I'm growing today. Yesterday, I spoke at BAFTA at a leadership summit in front of quite a few people. That was a growth moment for me as well. So, I think Conor respects that. We are a family. We're a close-knit team. And we all care. We all really care. So, the main emotion was pride in that first one, even though we did everything to win. But we knew that we had to right that wrong in the second one.
Yeah. I know I used that word competing with Conor. We're in like the running and sprints and stuff. I see you guys on the sprint machines and he's standing there admiring what you're doing and vice versa. Ask you a bit of a playful question here. Who's faster out of you and Conor?
Oh, it's 100% me. So, I'm messing. Nah, he's off. He's off. Listen, I'm clinging on for dear life, like being honest with you. But I take pride in that. I don't ever now, like I say, I'm not a 25-year-old whippet anymore. And I take pride in still being able to kick it with him. Like I really do. I have to be quite smart. Like some of the step sessions and things, honestly, Stephen, they're absolutely brutal. The amount of force you're putting into those steps. So I'll do some of that with him to guide him and try and push him, but the longer runs, the sprints I was doing with him, I felt great this training camp. I really did. The body held up, and look, he's definitely faster, he's definitely fitter. Early on though, and he won't mind me saying this thing, early on in camp my running's good, and I was cruising, but then it was really interesting. So say, I'm not saying I was above him, but say I was a little bit, and then as camp went on, his fitness and everything just went like this. And it was incredible to see. Like he was off on a couple of those longer runs. The thing with Conor, he's so high octane, he's so bloody competitive, right? We're saying, right, we're doing a zone 2 steady state cardio, building your aerobic fitness, like 120 to 150 BPM heart rate. And then he'll have to compete. He'll have to push. So, but again, that's probably why he's where he is.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you this question. You may not, I'm not saying you're going to know the answer to it, and it might not even be a thing that you can answer, but Chris Eubank at the end of that second fight tipped his hat to Conor and said, listen, no excuses, you're the better man. And I thought that was very professional of him to do that. I've met him once in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, fun enough, at the F1. So I can't say I know him, but what I have met of him, I like him. Some people on camera, they say he's XYZ. I like him. I think he's good for the sport. I like Conor. I've not met him, but I like who he is. I know I've interviewed Harlem Eubank a couple of times. I like Harlem a lot. So I think all of these fighters are really, really, really good people. But that side of it alluded to there was some shit going on with him in his life. Do you think that is a genuine reason why the fight didn't go the way he planned, or do you think that is an excuse?
I definitely think it's an excuse. I try not to get too involved in the other team. It's control the controllables. We just focus on our man. We do everything we can to ensure our man gets his arm raised. Whatever's going on there, why are we going to waste any energy on it? Jimmy Iovine talks about this in the Defiant ones on Netflix when they sold Beats to Apple for $3 billion. You've got to watch it if you haven't. Like, unbelievable guy. He says, be like a racehorse. The reason racehorses wear blinkers, so they don't miss a step. They're singular-minded in reaching their goal. Otherwise, if they're looking left to right, they're losing where they're going. Similar concept here. I don't know, maybe he did have something going on. Obviously, he's coming to the twilight years, tail end of his career, but I don't focus on that. All I focus on is the fact that we prepared, we gave everything we could this training camp. We all sacrificed. I came back from Dubai to the UK for over 9 weeks, gave everything, every ounce of my being for that camp. And I'm not even the athlete. Imagine what Conor put in. His sacrifice, his financial investment. So if he had something wrong with him, he has something wrong with him. I wish him all the best. I wish him full health. Like, that's never in question. But I tend not to get involved in the politics of the other team.
Understood. The entire team went through a training camp. This is what I've heard through the social media and also through other interviews you've done. And I really love that, because if all the emphasis is just on the fighter, which I know 99% of it, or 95% of it has to be, then I get it. But I think if everyone around you is also on that mission, not to fight Chris Eubank or not to get in the ring, but on their mission to become a higher performing person of their self, I think it's only going to benefit someone like Conor. How true was that? Everyone was focused on the fight camp for their self as well as the fighter.
I'll give you the facts. It was 100% completely true. It was the first camp in Mallorca. We say environment dictates outcomes. I set the standard in there. And there were a couple of times one individual brought a couple of sweets into the house. And we said, that's completely unacceptable. Conor saw it, said, what are you doing? You cannot have that in here. He never did it again. He was quite new to the environment. So the standard was set. And fundamentally, when I come to standards, Stephen, is like, if you allow something to occur and you do not address it, well, that's your new standard.
It's a new culture. Yeah.
Because you haven't addressed it. And I'm not talking about being rude or bullying a China shop mentality. The art of communication is key. But letting someone know that's not acceptable in this environment. It's a very close environment, very closed, very professional, with very high standards, with a very clear goal where, again, we've all sacrificed, we're all dialed into that goal. So that was not allowed. 3 individuals in that first fight camp. So we set up gamification and steps. And they won't mind me saying, it was his sister, it was the chef, and it was the assistant coach, Pedro. Between them, 7 kilograms to 11 kilograms was lost throughout the whole training camp. A considerable amount of weight. These people were in good positions anyway. They certainly weren't very out of shape. And what we created was everyone had to hit a minimum of 10,000 steps a day. Quite an arbitrary number, but adhering to the principle of NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, movement outside of your training window. And the reason we had a bit of gamification was if someone was at 8,000, it was at 6 o'clock, we'd all go for a team walk. So we all changed that environment. Conor, of course not. Conor would stay there, but we'd all go out walking around Mallorca. We were in a very small town, very secluded, quiet area, which was great for a training camp. So that was a key catalyst. Of course, alongside that, you don't just lose that amount of weight over that period of time by just moving more or doing steps. They were training a little bit, not a lot, but they were training a little bit, but they were, of course, eating well. The chef prepared the food and the food was put in front of us. So, of course, they were in a caloric deficit comparatively to how they normally eat, which is a fundamental driver for fat loss. So that and moving more, but we just made it fun. We said, right, if you haven't hit it, you've got to do it. And we set the standard. So going back to how that shapes the athlete, well, it shapes the environment. Improving the environment, knowing that everyone's getting after it in their own domain. To the point of the start of the pod, we said, right, in their own arena. Conor's arena is different, but at least these individuals are actually trying to level up. They're trying to improve. They're trying to have that growth mindset. Then we've got to respect that.
Yeah. Slightly on the same sort of conversation here, Dan. It's definitely affiliated to it. How shall I start this? I think the language that you choose to project out into the world, but then also about yourself sometimes, is really, really, really key. Because I picked up on your conversation as well. Like, Conor's a human, yeah? First and foremost, he's human. And no human can get away from every single feeling that we all feel. Excitement, fear, anxiety, doubt, elation, all these kind of things, hunger, thirst, everything. Tony Robbins said it's okay to feel depressed. The problem is it's not okay to live there. So you can touch on it, feel it, recognize it, and then move out of it, rather than allow it to manifest into be exaggerated because you're sitting in it all the time. And I think that the words that you say have a massive influence over that, the feeling and also and therefore the outcome. And I think I picked up where Conor maybe said something a little bit weak or a little bit kind of, wasn't the kind of winner mindset type language, and you helped him sort of check that back in. So then he could maintain this positivity. So the question I'm trying to ask in a roundabout way is, language that you use, how important is it for regular people and also these high performers?
I'll come back to the language in a second. The first part of that, I'd like to give a visual representation because that's perfectly articulated, is the feeling is a state. It's a current state in that moment, whether that's depression, whether that's positivity, whatever. I'll stick with depression. It's just like a cloud. The good thing about clouds, they pass. They're only there for a moment and then they move on. So that's how you've got to think about your current state. So if you are in a hole, if you are in a dark place, that won't last forever. You can change your state literally like that. You can change your state with breath work. If your autonomic nervous system split into two divisions is in that sympathetic drive, on, go, highly strung, quick, short, sharp breaths, palms are sweating. You can literally sit there and do some basic box breathing, 4-4-7 method, and change your physiology, which in turn can then start changing and shaping your psychology. So just with some simple systems, I think it's really good to know. I couldn't brush past the first part of the question, that anyone can change it. It will pass. Your environment will help you move that on very quickly. To the second part of the question, I know exactly the point. Conor was hanging over the ring ropes in Mallorca, and I just saw it, and he trains hard. He's a savage. And I saw him, head was a little bit low. Posture was a little bit scarce, should we say. Abundant, scarce. You all right? Oh, yeah. I said, Con, no bad sessions. He just went, oh, Dan, that got me. No bad sessions. We anchored that term for the rest of the camp. And I'm not saying there were other times where he was down, there wasn't. Conor's not like that. He's up 95% of the time. But there were a couple of times I'd throw those words in, and he'd be like, yeah, no bad sessions. And then just prior to the ring walk on fight night, we do, the touch of gloves. You don't say too much in that moment. The hard work's been done. Con, no bad sessions this camp. Best training camp we've ever had. Go out and do what you do. Boom, done. So I think, look, communication, the words you use is very powerful. I think for me, working in that environment, without sounding egotistical, it's one of my strengths. Knowing when to push, knowing when to pull, knowing what to say in what moment. I think many people who haven't been exposed to that environment would not know what to say, and you can feel that energy off them. We've had it to a point where someone's asked me who should be in the changing room, and I've said, I don't think that person should be in the changing room, because I think it's going to impact the outcome. Not the outcome, but I think it's going to impact the energy in the changing room that, who knows, could lead to suboptimal outcomes. We've all put so much in. We've got to be really smart with every minute detail. Even the first fight, we got told there were no mirrors in the changing room. It's clearly stipulated that we have to have mirrors in the changing room. We find that out because someone had actually gone to the stadium on the day just to make sure everything was set up the way we needed it to be. Again, everything's curated, everything's planned. And some may think, well, why is that important, having mirrors in the changing room? Just get on with it. It's boxing. It's high octane. That's people who've never been in that sport and in that arena. This was the biggest fight, steeped in British boxing history with the fathers, the first time round. So many unknowns that I mentioned earlier. Conor, for 12 weeks in Mallorca, had been drilling every day, twice a day, in a mirror. You then remove mirrors in fight night. I think, logic would say that's probably not the smartest thing to do. So thankfully we managed to scramble a little bit, and myself and Lee, the lawyer and manager, we managed to source some mirrors. So Conor was none the wiser. He didn't even become aware of any of that until after. So yeah, those small details really do matter.
One of my pet hates is if someone walks in and goes, and it happens in this sort of time, in this part of the calendar, they walk in and go, oh, it's fucking miserable out there. And I always think, like, it's only such a small thing, but moaning about the weather, it leads on to other things that you're going to moan about, and then that therefore affects so much over time. If you compound that negativity, it's wet out there, agreed, but it's not miserable. It's just wet, and I adjust that with I've got my kids and family, and I say that quite a lot, because it does start to go into other parts of your life if you allow that to be your own standard or your own sort of culture. Don't put your own emotion on it, just call it what it is. I prefer things to be hot, no doubt. I like it to be sunny, but not one is miserable and one is like, whatever. It's you're putting too much emotion on it sometimes.
Look at the power of that word, miserable. So you'll talk about the weather being miserable, but in reality, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
You're now allowing that word to impact your emotion just by what's going on outside. And look, if you're living in the UK, well, if that's the case, you're going to be miserable all the time, because we know we don't see much sun. So I think you're completely right. Language can have positives in the way that we just spoke about with Conor, but negatives as well. And we've got to really be self-aware of what we're actually saying and how that impacts others.
And this is going slightly off a little bit, and people might feel like I sound a bit cuckoo here, but this is what this is the sort of mindset stuff that I do on myself. I try and brainwash myself as much as possible. So like when things are happening, I will say to myself, I've recognized at certain points last year, I was getting quite angry at certain things. And now over the break, I've now reframed it as like, okay, I can feel myself getting a little bit wound up here. You have to see this as a test. Something has put that in your environment. They're trying to get you angry and you can't allow it because it's beating you. So this is a test. If something happens, like it's raining a lot, how I brainwash myself is, do you know why that's fucking great? Because that means more people are going to be inside and they're probably going to want to come into the gallery to see more art, or they're going to be there ready to take a phone call. Whatever's happening out there, it goes back to that kind of cliche thing people say online. Either things are happening against you or they're happening for you, and it's up to your interpretation of which one you stand by. Is that a saying that you live and breathe, Dan?
Yeah, I completely wholeheartedly agree with that. I think already having this conversation with you, Stephen, we've got such alignment with our views of the world and how we carry out our day to day. So yeah, I truly believe that. I believe these small things that many may not understand, these small things, how we think, how we communicate, how we show up each and every day, how we perceive certain situations. I think that's important as well, because you could have the same thing occurring. The looking out the window, one person says, oh, it's miserable out there. The other's like, it's raining, but do you know what? That's going to help my business. I'm buzzing. Let's make some money.
I interviewed a guy called Alfie Best. He is the guy on the.
Is he living at Isha way?
You could be. He now lives in Monaco.
Okay.
He has Wild Crush Park Homes, the largest static park homes, I believe, in Europe.
Yeah.
Traveller.
Yeah.
And he's called the Billionaire Gypsy. It was made by a guy called Joel Van, someone who's I've sort of got to know him over the last film producer, and I think that documentary is on Amazon Prime, and it's a really, really good watch. And he said to me, about the raining thing, some people will moan about it, and he said, I just spin it. Great, I don't have to water my plants today. Anything that's happening is fantastic. You've got to spin it into your favour. Just the last point on the Conor Benn conversation, the second fight. The first fight, he was a loss. On the second fight, he got the win, and you can see how pleased he was for the family name to get that win over the Eubanks. What did he do differently from a physical standpoint, a mental aspect, and also an emotional one? How did he switch from the first fight to the second fight with Chris Eubank Jr.?
He removed emotion. The first fight, it was all emotion. You saw the first round, Conor looked like, and you won't mind me saying this, looked like never boxed before. His feet were out of range. He was swinging in wildly with the right hand, no jab. And Conor's got a great, underrated jab. So all of that got removed. Calm amidst the chaos. This is something that Conor was aware of anyway, I'm sure, but definitely something I brought in this camp with Conor. We had numerous conversations about this. There's the Zenzu art of war. I'm going to paraphrase this, can butcher it massively, but it's not the hothead who wins the war. It's the calm, calculated warrior. That's how it needed to be. We knew Conor could fight. Of course we did. He fought well in the first fight. But was he disciplined? Can he be disciplined for 12 rounds? Can he box? These were things that maybe people didn't know as much. And he went and showed that he could absolutely box. The work the guys put in, Tony, Pedro, and the whole team, this camp, like no one will see that, and I'm not going to speak on it. It's not my place to say. But it was very tactile. It was very clear. The tactics had to be right, but then they also had to be carried out the correct way by Conor in that environment, in the arena. Every fight with Conor and John Ryder originally, I put a quote on the wall by Theodore Roosevelt, the man in the arena. Incredible quote. I'm not even going to try and say it, but for anyone listening, just Google it and you'll see. Premise of it is no one can really say anything because they're not you. They're not in the arena. It's the man in the arena who counts. And I think that really hits home.
Joe Cortina, George Groves, Conor Benn, John Ryder.
Josh Taylor.
Great champion he was. These are all elite fighters. Now, obviously, the one that got a lot of attention was, the Conor Benn against Chris Eubank Jr. You mentioned George Groves against Cole Froch, the first one, fantastic fight. John Ryder fighting Canelo. Now, admittedly, from sitting in the back seat at home watching it and seeing that fight being announced, I thought to myself, he's going to get murdered. You know, he's going to get ironed out probably in a couple of rounds. I tell you what, that man done our country absolutely proud. And in actual fact, I'll rephrase that. He done boxing proud. You know, he's shown that. You know, he comes across as a normal, genuine, lovely guy. He can fucking fight. I personally believe he beat Callum Smith when he fought him. I totally believe he won that. And then he went against Canelo. When that fight was announced and you was part of that camp, you was working with John Ryder, how big of a mountain in your own mind was it for him to climb?
We knew the mountain was massive. Of course we did. And as we say this now, Canelo's obviously recently been defeated by Terence Crawford, but Canelo was an absolute world beater then. No one could touch him. And we also knew that we were entering the Lion's Den in Guadalajara, Mexico, Jalisco, and just an incredible experience the whole thing was. But we didn't go there just to make up the numbers. And many would have thought you saw, like, when that fight gets announced, a couple of rounds I'll give John. That wasn't our viewpoint. We prepare to win. We do everything to win. We knew that the magnitude of that fight, that was for undisputed, all the belts in the 168-pound super middleweight division into the Lion's Den. And we believed we could win. We really did. And John showed so much that fight. I think it was the end of the second round. One small mistake, busted up his nose, broke his nose. He couldn't breathe, literally. He went to the corner. He couldn't sit down on the stool. He couldn't get oxygen in. The kahunas on John Ryder, by the way, unbelievable. He could have easily quit. Got put down in whatever round it was. Thought, look, I've made my money irrespective. Not John. Nicknamed the Gorilla for a reason. Literally beat his chest and just got on with it. And I think earned the respect of everyone. Like you say, like, if we're looking at what do we represent, people here, like, hard work. We've all worked hard. We're all pushing. That's John Ryder. John Ryder, at the time, the Smith fight, he was on a council estate in Angel. And he absolutely beat Callum Smith. November 23rd, 2019. I remember it so well. The same date, fun enough, of Froch Groves won, believe it or not, November 23rd. And again, we went into the Lion's Den then. The narrative had been built around Smith fighting Canelo at Anfield after it. It was a foregone conclusion. No one gave John any hope. And he went there and he won that fight. Of course he did. He bullied Callum Smith, who I believe is a great fighter, and the Smith family are a lovely family, to be clear. But he was robbed in that moment and never did become a full world champion. But I tell you something, going to Guadalajara and fighting Canelo, that's pretty special. And he gave everything. It was a great experience. No excuses. The better man won, of course. But to go 12 rounds and really bring it to Canelo at times was, I think, very, very cool.
They're talking about now, you may or may not know the full ins and outs. And obviously, I understand as a professional person that you're going to have to keep your cards close to your chest and certain things. But Conor Benn against Ryan Garcia, really interesting fight that would be. I think even if Conor got against Devin Haney, for example, that would be another really, really good one. Or Lopez, any of these fights, I think really, really good fights these. I'm intrigued about the Ryan Garcia one. And I know all fighters are the same. It depends on what version turns up. If the best version of Conor Benn turns up, what happens? If the best version of Garcia turns up, what happens? In your own mind, Conor Benn versus Ryan Garcia, how does that fight go?
That's the fight that excites me personally. I think it would really announce Conor in the US market as well. He gets great exposure in the US though. After the fight, he was doing the rounds in New York, and he's, as we said, the marketability, and people are aware as to who Conor Benn is, but that would take him to a completely different stratosphere, going over there and beating Ryan Garcia for the 147th famous green belt. But Garcia's got to beat Mario Barrios first on February the 21st, I believe. And that's not an easy fight. Depends what Ryan Garcia turns up on that night. I'll back my guy, of course I do. We're there to win. I don't get back into a training camp with Conor Benn if I think, we're not going to win. Why would I do that? I've got a great life in Dubai. I've removed myself from boxing. I got called back in by Conor because of the magnitude of the Eubank fight. And it had to take a huge fight of someone I actually care about, like Conor, to get me back into that. And I'm glad I did, of course I am. Because talking about fulfillment and intrinsic drive and intrinsic meaning, something that's more than money, that's what that's about. That was steeped in British history. I was blessed to be part of Froch Groves 1, Froch Grove 2. That fight changed the game for British boxing for it to be where it is now. No one can deny that. And then obviously Anthony Joshua took it to a completely different level. And that then allowed all of these fights occurring now, and the Saudis' investment and where boxing is, and fighters getting paid what they deserve, which I think is great. But to your question in terms of that fight, again, it depends on Ryan Garcia, of course, but yeah, Conor Benn to win the 147 famous green belt that his father won. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Serious stuff. You mentioned Anthony Joshua. Recently, there was that horrendous crash where two of his friends lost their lives. And I remember, look, I was away in Fuerteventura over New Year's, and I thought, oh my God. I mean, when you saw the recreation of how, the car got wiped out, half of it, it was almost like the crash perfectly cocooned round Joshua. And I said to him, I'm not overly a religious person, really. I do believe in the law of attraction. I do believe you will gain the energy that you put out to the world. Whether that is a religious thing, I don't know. I believe in that. I think if you think positively, act positively, it will come back round in some kind of form. And I said to myself, if there is a God, he is, for some reason, protected him in that moment. And I'm hoping we'll see him back in boxing, and I know he's been back training and stuff. But before that, there was another big moment for him, I guess, which was Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. Thoughts on that fight?
I can't just pass over that and say, look, God rest their souls. That was disgusting in terms of what happened. And I think the boxing world has, really been taken aback by it. So, firstly, rest in peace. And if he chooses to box again, that's his choice, and maybe have an even deeper meaning. So respect his decision. Irrespective, he's done incredibly well in the sport. Thoughts on that fight? Tip my hat to him. Easiest money he's ever made. Brilliant. Can't knock it. It's a tough old game. If someone's willing to give you that amount of money, I'm just annoyed if that's right about the dual taxation from the UK and America. I'll get these numbers slightly wrong. I think it was something like he was meant to make 90 million and he ended up walking away with 36 million because he got dual taxed, which I think is wild. Many will say, again, probably the negative people say, oh, it's still 36 million. And of course it is. But I don't know, surely you would have had everything lined up to make sure you don't get dual taxed.
Yeah.
Whether, again, don't believe everything on social media. But look, to your point, respect. Like, just make your money, get out. He's, again, a very astute individual. He's got a lot of property in and around here, I believe. So, make your money work for you. Yeah,
I mean, just on that note, though, I mean, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm guessing from a business person standpoint. When a fighter goes in and gets a purse, are they doing it as an individual, or do they set up their own limited company and then they treat it like a business, right? So Woodbury House, I might place an artwork with a collector and it might be 100 grand. Steve Sully doesn't suddenly get a big tax bill. I've done it through the Woodbury House brand and also limited company, and I feel that is probably how fighters are structured. Or am I wrong?
Honestly, not my domain, but they do have, well, again, the fighters nearer to the summit of the mountain, so to speak, who have teams, they would have limited companies and, it would go into those companies. But I don't know whether there's something slightly different for athletes. That's the slight, I think I've had a couple of conversations about that, because the thing would be, well, why not set up, a company in Dubai and, obviously remove all the tax, but they're then boxing in the US or the UK. So I think there is again, I'm not, don't come to me for tax advice, blow.
Because when I saw that number and I saw the same headlines as you, I'm thinking, how true could that be? Because if he's going for a limited company, I understand there might be some kind of tax in America, but then if you're also being taxed as a UK citizen, surely they could roll that in there. I don't know, but it didn't make a lot of sense to me.
It's probably not even true, right? Yeah. It's social media. Don't go there for your information.
My question when I asked you about Anthony Joshua against Jake Paul was probably led from how most of the public make comments about stuff like this. Oh, he's a YouTuber. He shouldn't be fighting a YouTuber. He's lost his legacy now that he's not fighting a real fighter. What is your kind of take on it? I'll give you my take, Dan. I'm interested in two fellas having a punch up, regardless whether they're actual world champion boxers or YouTubers, if I think it's going to be a bit of an entertaining fight because of the build up and because of their social media presence, regardless of their skill, I'm going to tune in, which I did. What's your take on it?
Yeah. Let's be honest though, right? As purists, we've been in boxing in some capacity for a long, long time. It wasn't a great fight though, was it? Let's be real. It wasn't a scrap. It wasn't anything. So I don't fully like it. As much as I respect what he's done and made his money, I honestly, I truly do respect that. I think very tactile from the team. I don't massively like it. I don't like this whole misfits thing. And look, fair play, they're making a load of money. But then you've got boxers who, going back to how marketable you are, boxers who've been working on their craft since they were 5-6 years old, and they're not getting paid anything, you know. So that part doesn't sit well with me as a purist. But I also can absolutely respect and understand why it's occurring. So, look, kudos to them. But yeah, fundamentally, it's the art of war. Like you want to see a scrap. You want to get value for money as a hard-working individual who pays the ticket fee to get into the stadium or arena.
Yeah. 2 quotes. Leaders are readers and earners are learners. And I know from listening to your conversations, you tick both of those boxes, Dan. I want to pick your brain slightly. If you can list for the audience and also for me personally, what are some of the best books for leadership, strength, mental strength, goals, aspirations, being a better person? What are your, call it your top 5 or 10 audio books or books we should be tuning into?
Love an audio book. So Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Not so much leadership, but the art of delegation. Protecting your energy so you can do the big needle moving tasks and delegating other tasks to your team or other people who might be better at those tasks so you can focus on, you know, the big stuff that's going to really change the game for you, which again, if you're looking at overwhelm and being in control of your emotions, that's important. Otherwise that volcano, boom, 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 it's going to build and eventually it's going to erupt. So Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Who Not How by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. Unbelievable book. Don't tell me how to do something, find me someone who can do it. Similar premise for both of those. Raise Your Game by Alan Stein Jr. This is one that I wouldn't say I made, but I said to Conor he should be listening to in the first camp in Mallorca, and we listened to it together, and then we'd bounce ideas across of unpacking certain parts of information. Alan Stein Jr. worked with, loosely I think, he worked with Kobe Bryant and a couple of others, but he talks really well. He's got good frameworks, and I thought Conor could resonate with these other high level athletes. Generally speaking, they have that level of relatability. So Raise Your Game by Alan Stein Jr. So leadership. Callum Smith, John Ryder, me and John had an Airbnb in Angel for 3 weeks prior to the fight because John had a young family. And I bought him Relentless by Tim Grover. Tim Grover, high performance coach, worked with Michael Jordan back in the day. So Relentless is definitely another one. And Legacy by James Kerr, talking about environment, winning teams, the New Zealand All Blacks, one of the most winningest teams on the planet, talking about standards and culture and environment. They have something called a no dickheads policy. You will literally get thrown out because that's the standard. Going back to what we said earlier, if the standard's there and you do this, if I don't address it, that's the new standard. If I do, boom, standard remains. And that's why they're one of the most successful teams in world sport. They have a saying in there called sweep the sheds. No one's bigger than the team. Richie McCaw, Dan Carter, I don't know if you like rugby, but they are the OGs. They're the David Beckhams of that sport at the time. And they'd be picking up towels in the changing room because it needed to be done. So yeah, that's definitely another one. Atomic Habits by James Clear has to be my final one. Unbelievable book. He's got a new work but out now. You know, I talk a lot about 1% better every day. Yields a 37 times improvement over the course of a calendar year. Quite literally, you can change your life if you just focus on small incremental gains every single day. But then you have to do it enough for the time horizon of 12 months to really see the shift. Not 30 days, not 60 days. Just be consistent. It's like the diamond and the pickaxe analogy. You're chipping away, you're working hard. The diamonds are there, but you walk away. Just do it for a long enough time horizon to see change. And going back to one of your questions earlier of overwhelm and starting where you stand, identifying where your feet are. Identify where your feet are, identify what the outcome is, reverse engineer, create some process-led goals and daily actions and daily non-negotiables, 3 to 5 things I will do every single day without negotiation, and then do that for a prolonged period of time and create an environment that is conducive, that doesn't give friction, conducive to that goal, you'll be successful.
Affirmations. Is it something that you do? Is it something that you have a perception on? Have you got your own version of what an affirmation looks like or feels like? Affirmations, are they really important to you, Dan?
I do positive self-talk in my head. I don't vocalize it. I look a bit strange, but I do that. That's my probably closest way to say that I do affirmations. I have recently started doing gratitude journaling in the evening. That's quite powerful for me. Also to reflect on a day to see how good that day has been. You might think you've had a terrible day, and then you actually sit with yourself for 5 to 10 minutes, re-regulate your nervous system with some breath work. Don't have loads of distractions around you. Dim the lights and say, pen and paper, I always get it out of my head. The research supports writing your goals down as well. So, that's important. And I have that. I have a whiteboard and a big calendar for 12 months from Jesse Itzler, I think it is. I bought that online. And, now I've added in some gratitude journaling for 5 to 10 minutes, clearly listing what's gone well on that day. And actually you look back at it and you think, actually, the day's been pretty good. Let's go again tomorrow. So not massive on the affirmation side. Do a little bit of, I certainly do positive self-talk in my head. What I do, Stephen, leading on from one of your points earlier, I absolutely banish and diminish negative self-talk. I do not allow it to come into this space. I used to identify as a non-runner. Believe it or not, you was championing the Conor Benn runs. That never used to be me. And as I sit here now, for many people listening, and it might be their first time being exposed to me, I've worked on myself every single day. And I used to tell myself, I can't run. I hate running with the words. And I was like, what am I doing? I coach these high-level executives, these strategies and systems about positivity, and I'm actually doing this myself. So step 1, never say that again. Never vocalize that. Never say that in my head. Step 2, create an environment that allows me to get my wheels turning, to break inertia, to become a runner. Step 3, start identifying as a runner. But that's where it's the whole law of attraction, start saying it. I've now got to start doing it, step 4. So what I did, I'd get my running kit out the evening before. I didn't go and run by myself when I was living in the UK at 6 a.m. in the morning in the pissing down rain. That's not going to set me up for success. The first thing I'm going to do is say, actually, it's raining outside. I'm not going to do that. So my friend Jordan would come and pick me up from my place in Surbiton. He'd drive us to Richmond Park. Jordan's a go-getter. He's got growth mindset as well. He's big in finance. We had great, powerful conversations. We'd run. We wouldn't go and do a half marathon. We'd do 5K. We then incrementally increase that to 6K, 7K, and so on, and gradually increase it. We wouldn't see this acute spike in volumes, more than our body could tolerate, and then our legs are fatigued for days, and then you anchor a negative thought process towards running, and then you don't do it again. We'd also have a reward mechanism at the end of the run. I'm a bit of a coffee snob, Stephen. I'm okay to admit that. We'd have a bougie coffee at the end, and then he'd drop me home. I think we'd agree that's a pretty frictionless environment. Also doing it in Richmond Park, which is a beautiful environment with lots of health conscious individuals either running or on bikes. So that's how I started the journey. I removed the negative self-talk.
Wicked answer. Part of my own journey, and you mentioned it earlier, is the breath work. And again, certainly my dad, he's coming around to some of my thinking. I've convinced him. I've got a sunlight and infrared sauna at home. I've also got a brass monkey ice bath. I've got my own gym and stuff. And I listen to a bit of Gary Brecker. I listen to Huberman. I listen to David Esprit. I listen to a few people. And the breath work, and obviously Wim Hof. Listening to these people, I didn't really understand why the breath work was so important, or how it could change the state of your feeling, your mindset, and also physically, internally and stuff. And I tell you what, since I've been doing that, a part of my non-negotiables in the morning, it's unbelievable. I would say that is if I'm not training in the morning, or even if I am training, I do the 3 rounds of breath work outside. I then do the earthing, where I barefoot go across the grass to my outhouse where the ice bath is. Then I come back out, and then I train. and then I go into work. And I've adjusted all of this stuff over time because of listening to podcasts with Joe Rogan and etc. Obviously, we can talk about the saunas and the ice baths and stuff, but let's hyper focus on this breathwork stuff. You will know more than I do. What does it actually do? Why is it so powerful for athletes, but also your regular person doing breathwork?
I'm glad you've seen a big shift on it. Evidently, you're passionate about it because you've seen an ROI.
It's unbelievable. It's like a natural drug.
Yeah, literally. And it can quite literally change your state. That's the key part. Again, going back to what we touched on earlier, if you're in this high sympathetic drive, short, sharp breaths, palms are sweaty, always on the go. We work with high-level CEOs across the globe. That's often their state. Go, go, go. What now? Achieve that. Boom. What now? What now? What now? Highly strung, always on. High levels of allostatic load, high levels of stress. So how do we then change that division? How do we move from always being on in a sympathetic state to more of a parasympathetic rest and digest recovery mode? That's where breathing can come in. Again, changing the environment slightly. We've got a load of bright lights around us. That's really not aligned to switching off. We understand that. So in the evening, I'll use blue light glasses and things to obviously blue lights negatively impact melatonin production, the sleep hormone, which negatively impacts sleep. So these things around creating an environment is important. And breath work can quite literally change your physiology, which then can transform your psychology as well. So if you're in that moment of negativity, you used the word depression earlier, I called it a cloud that was going to pass. If you are in that moment, I'd advise anyone to at least try breath work. And again, it could be as simple as box breathing, 4-4-7 method, 4-second inhalation through the nose, 4-second hold, and then empty the lungs with a 7-second exhalation. Do that for 5 minutes and just see how you change. And it's linked to obviously looking at the raw data and objectivity. If you're using a Whoop or an Aura ring, it will change your HRV. You'll see changes. And for me, that's the benefit of it.
Yeah, because even if you look at things like, sauna, a traditional one or infrared one, I mean, there are statistics coming out from David Asprey and all these other sort of, let's say, biohackers or wellness people or profiles that, you can literally add 7 to 10 years onto your life, and you could be adding more life to those years as you coined earlier. And then you do the breath work and stuff like that. It is amazing how it does make you feel. And it's not like immediately right here, right now in the moment, but over a course of a couple of weeks, you then start to go, I'm holding my breath for longer, which is a good sign. I'm expanding the capacity of the oxygen in my lungs, and therefore in your red blood cells, there's more oxygen going around, and that can only be good for your performance or your thinking and etc. I've only just picked up doing the earthing stuff again. Again, it was a little bit like how much of it do I kind of buy into it and not? But then again, I think someone was telling me about the energy you get from it and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, even if it is what do they call it? Placebo, who cares? Just do it. And it's another thing of ticking off another thing. I call it a routine of a champion. Trying to do something, just doing another thing in the morning.
Nailing your morning routine, fundamentally. Yeah. I spoke yesterday about this. Win the morning, win the day.
Yeah.
Do you start with intention or do you start on the back foot? Are you reactive, reacting to everything, putting out fires on your phone? Or are you proactive on the front end? Do you plan your day strategically? And I advised everyone yesterday, and for anyone listening, try and structure at least 75% of your day. Have a natural sleep-wake cycle. So natural sleep time, natural wake time, more challenging for someone with 2 kids. I get that, but at least try and control it. Know when you're training. Have a set time of when you're training. If it's important to you, put it in like an important meeting. If you're selling a piece of art, that's an important meeting for you. I know it is. Well, put your training in like it's the same. Because if it means a lot to you, then you'll do that. That's your intention. Have a rough idea of when you're having dinner. If, again, we're looking at, you mentioned Tony Robbins, who's doing the podcast rounds at the minute. He must have a new book or course coming out. But I've been massively inspired by Tony Robbins. I was listening when I used to box, going to Westside Boxing Gym with John Holland in the old banged out Renault Clio back in the day. I was putting my CDs in, and it was the Tony Robbins, whatever it was called, Limitless, whatever. That had a huge shift, made a huge shift with me, and a huge shaping of where I was going. Like massively, value what Tony was saying. But anyway, he talks about the buckets. 3 buckets. Generally speaking, for 99% of people, one is health, the other is business, and the third one is family or relationships. I think we'd agree. But you don't get an infinite amount of water to put in these buckets. A lot of people, their business bucket is massively overflowing. Their health bucket, it only has a little bit of water in. And then their relationships and family, again, is probably equal to their health bucket. Obviously, everyone is different. But a lot of the high-level CEOs come to me, they're like, Dan, I'm always on. I've got high stress. I travel across different time zones. We're building to an exit. This is a real push phase for me in the business. But I also value my family. I'm really struggling with this separation from being the CEO and leader in the office to then being the father and partner my wife needs at home. So we'll build simple systems around that of how do we separate the two. We're very tactile about that, because it fundamentally goes back to what do you place value on. And we can't be all business all the time. We all care about our business. We care about growth. We care about money to allow us to live the life we want to live, absolutely. But also, neither of the business or relationship bucket work without health. So that's why, and I say to anyone, you can absolutely have all 3. We're not looking for this equilibrium of, balance. Oh, I hate that word. Balance between all 3. You're going to have push phases. Of course you are with business, but your health will drive the business. Your relationships will drive the business. If you've got the right spouse, the right family, and you have a system that allows you to decompartmentalize and separate the two and ensure that when Stephen is the business owner and CEO here, he's very different to the Stephen that's at home with his spouse and with his kids. He has that element of separation. And that's really the key part.
I resonate with that. I'm going to say this last part, Dan, okay? I will admit, I love a red wine. I love a Guinness. I love a beer. I do. I really do. I do actually enjoy it. And I know there's a part of me that talks to myself, which I think is probably a little bit of sometimes I say, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I feel it's incongruent sometimes, but I'm not going to lie. I enjoy it. I really do. And part of my role, or this role here within Woodbury House, is wine and dining clients. They want to go for a drink and stuff like that. So you're in a different environment to me. You're in great nick, super shape, and I've seen that from obviously all your content and stuff, and obviously being in front of me. But are there moments where you, Dan, even this high performer, have a beer, have a wine, or is it something you never do?
Firstly, back to you, don't beat yourself up on that. And I do understand the fact that the nature of what you do may involve an element of entertainment as well, and it will allow someone to maybe bring their guard down to like you a little bit more, to earn more trust. I understand all of that. Maybe 1 glass, maybe 2, fine. 2 bottles, that's a problem. And you can actually look at the data to prove that. So one of my mentors and someone I've worked with for years is Casper Bass. You won't know the name, but you'll know the brand. Joe and the Juice.
Oh, right.
We've all been overcharged for a tuna avo sandwich. I actually had one on the way here, fun enough.
They're actually really nice.
Good,
spicy tuna one is unbelievable.
Yeah, so anyway, Casper's been a very impactful individual on my life. I've learned a lot. I'd be foolish to not be a sponge when I've been around him for a while, to then take that into how I carry out my day-to-day. And we looked at the data. Casper also very much likes an expensive red wine. And why not? He deserves it. He's worked blimmin' hard and built a global business in the F&B space. But he also values heavy back squats and getting after it in the gym. So we did a bit of a test and looked at the data on this. 2 glasses of red at Chiltern Firehouse on a Tuesday evening, getting to bed at a decent time. We look at the data on HRV the next morning. HRV is good, no issue. Goes into the gym, PBs on a back squat, great. Next week, all variables are the same, but 2 glasses turn into 2 bottles. Next day, goes into the gym, crumbles under the bar, gets injured and doesn't hit that PB, obviously, because his HRV didn't look at the data. This isn't actually literal, the last part isn't, but the story is actually true. Looks at the data, wow, HRV had fallen off the cliff. Everything, sleep was impacted, very poor, recovery wasn't there. Instead of being a green recovery, he's now in a red recovery because he overcooked it from an alcohol point of view. So when you know that, even though you place value on the red wine, you then also have to say, well, which one is more important? Can I do both? You can absolutely do both. But that's where you can use data to override the whole emotion that you associate with going out and having a red wine. So look, I'd say for me specifically, alcohol doesn't align with how I want to carry out my day-to-day. I had a drink on New Year's Eve with my girlfriend and her sister. Didn't go crazy, but, you know, did have a few drinks. And it just hits me hard, Stephen, I'll be honest, man. I can't recover. Because I live my life so clean, I'm not going to compare myself to a Ferrari or a finely tuned race car, right? But, you know, you take that Ferrari through the forest, it's not going to end well. You keep that Ferrari on the roads around Mayfair, fine. So, yeah, I struggle. It's just not aligned. I want to bring my best self every single day so I can show up and have powerful conversations with you that hopefully has been seen by a few people that can hopefully use these methods and frameworks to improve their life.
Yeah, I love that.
That's what means a lot to me. Will I still let my hair down at times? Potentially, yeah. I've got no need or desire to drink in this moment. I'm in a very much a push phase of my business. Things are really building very, very well. I absolutely love how I live my day to day. But if I take my girlfriend out to a nice restaurant and have a couple of glasses of red or a cocktail, I'm absolutely fine with that. You know, I will never, though I'm the high performance guy, I will never frown upon someone having a drink. Go out and enjoy yourself. Absolutely. But if that happens too frequently and then you start deviating off track and then you tell me, Dan, I really want to be optimized. I really want to improve my health. I really want to look good, feel good, perform better. I want to take my business to a 9-figure exit. Yeah, but you're drinking 3 days a week. I'm going to say, stop BSing yourself because there's a complete misalignment here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Listen to that. There was a podcast that came out at the end of the year by Chris Williamson, and it was with Steve Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, and it was a really, really fantastic conversation between these two massive podcasters. And he said this, he said, to achieve something is, in theory, to pick something up. So in order to pick something up, you're going to have to put something down.
There you go.
And it's such a great quote. And it's so simple, and you can visualize exactly what he's talking about. Dan, this is coming to the end of the podcast, so I want to round off by saying this. What is the future for you? Like, what is going to go on the next 5-10 years? Who are the profiles you're going to be working alongside? What sort of goals, vision, stuff that you're going to be doing? Will you be living in Dubai still? Are you going to scale your company, sell your company? What are you going to be doing? What does the next few chapters look like for Mr. Daniel Lawrence?
Yeah. We've got our 12-month plan, so in the midst of training camp, I actually flew over to Portugal for 24 hours. My head of operations, Jamie, lives there. I've actually just made his dreams come true, by the way. He had a dream to move to Dubai. He's worked with me for a year now. Literally just turned a year a week ago.
Amazing.
And I gave him the news that he can now move to Dubai. I've, you know, increased his salary and done some things around the business and set up that, yeah, he was literally in tears that I could change his life. So that, again, for me, makes me feel so much better than us having the biggest month we've ever had in business in December, which we did have, which was incredible. We've onboarded some seriously high-level operators and CEOs to the business, but not just that, great people I vibe with, people who are go-getters. So that was a great feeling as well. But also changing Jamie's life in that regard and making his dream come true because he deserves it, because he's, you know, he works bloody hard, was also meaningful. For me, I'm going to be living in Dubai. My girlfriend's Iranian, so she's Persian. Obviously, there's some stuff going on in the world there, which is utterly shocking. So she needs to be relatively close to her family. I love Dubai. Dubai's right for me. The weather, everything else included, the opportunity, the growth mindset of individuals. So I'll definitely be living there. I want to build the best performance optimization program for men on the planet. I believe we're actually really getting there on track. We've got a world-class team, Stephen. My nutritionist is Dr. James Morhan, PhD, the head of performance nutrition with England Rugby. We've got Dr. Peter Tierney, who previously was the head data analyst for England Football, worked with Chelsea Football Club as well. We've got Dr. Padder in Australia, who is our blood work and musculoskeletal specialist. It's literally the Avengers of high performance. I'm building something now. I've just had a meeting there with Dr. Tony Banerjee called Superhuman Plus. So it really is for high-level executives who truly want to be optimized. So we're going to continue to build, continue to push. And I'll use the word scale because you used it. We're going to scale, but we're going to scale at our pace because value is the number one driver. I don't want to scale beyond my means just to make money. Impact is, again, so important to me. So yeah, we've got a very clear vision that probably doesn't go beyond 12 months, if I'm honest. We should, of course, I coach it, teach, 3 years and everything. But for me, the next 12 months are going to be massive, and I'm ready to push, I'm ready to attack, and I'm ready to change people's lives.
Really refreshing talking to someone like yourself, Dan, because I sort of, I resonate with a lot of what you say. And as I mentioned earlier, all humans sometimes can slightly fall off of certain things, and it's good to get in the right environment or align yourself with people like you or high performing people, because it makes you check yourself again. You know, it's refreshing. That's the word I'm going to use. It's refreshing. This is my very last question, and I ask it to all the guests, whether it's George Groves, Chris Billensmith, Hamza Shiraz, you name it, I've asked it. I've got a quote, and the quote goes like this: be happy, never content. I've got my own interpretation of that, Dan, but if I were to ask Dan Lawrence, what does be happy, never content mean to you?
I love it. I don't like the word content. For me, content means you're okay with where you're at. I said earlier, my biggest fear is staying the same. That really scares me. I love progress. Doesn't need to be massive, can be small, 1%, fine. But staying the same really scares me. And you look at kind of my life, my career, I've traveled a lot, I've had great experiences. And I think that's very much aligned with that. So be happy, never content. Happiness is, I suppose, in the eye of the beholder, right? We all have a different viewpoint of happiness. For me, fulfillment, I'll throw in as well. Like, I want to feel like I've had impact on one's life. I need to be selfish at times to enable me to become selfless and have impact that's aligned with our VVM as our business. Our VVM is our values, our vision, our mission, to help all these men over the world be truly optimized and change their lives. That, for me, enables me to be happy. So that would be my viewpoint on it. Content means staying the same. And it's okay to be feeling good in where you're at now. You know, I'm always in a high performance trait is always on to the next thing. If you watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, you know, there was certainly some positives there. There's also a couple of like, oh, wow, he achieved so much. Yeah, he's just boom, next. You know, really, you've got to enjoy the process. One thing I will say is I love my life. Every single day I wake up with in vigor. I wake up with a spring in my step and energy to help others and just perform the way I can perform. So, yeah, hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. Mate, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's great to be finally connected in person, and I look forward to potentially in the future maybe doing a part 2. I'll tell you what, I go to Dubai fairly frequently. We have got a, it's not really a gallery over there, it's more of a concession in a commercial building in Dubai. When I'm out there next, maybe we could do 100%. Something over there.
Definitely. All right. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Dan. I really enjoyed the conversation, and be happy, never content.
Love it. Mate.
Cheers.